Hello everybody, welcome to the Empire Sports Show. I am Adam Hernandez. Last week, Major League Baseball made the decision to remove the All-Star Game from Atlanta and the state of Georgia after a voting rules bill which undoubtedly enabled or established, I should rather say, the ability to essentially suppress the vote in that state. Now, conservatives have been arguing, and Republicans in that state and across the country, that what this actually does, what this new voting rules bill actually does, is expand the right to vote in Georgia, which is a typical response, considering Republicans and conservatives are very, very good at spinning the message. What they say is that what we'll do with this new bill is actually require at least one absentee drop-off box in every single county across the state. However, what this actually does is also limit the amount of voting drop-off boxes across the state of Georgia. So what this means is that, yes, you will get one drop box in rural counties across the state, but you will also limit the amount of drop boxes in more urban and populated areas across Georgia. And as we've known, in more urban areas, you're going to have more minority voters, and in more rural areas, you're going to have more white voters. So it actually is a way to increase the white vote and diminish and suppress the minority vote in that state. In response to this, Major League Baseball decided to remove the All-Star Game from the state entirely and move it to Denver, Colorado, where the Colorado Rockies play. And in response to this, Major League Baseball Commissioner last week, Rob Manfred, said, over the last week, we have engaged in thoughtful conversations with clubs' former and current players, the Players Association, and the Players Alliance, among others, to listen to their views. I have decided that the best way to demonstrate our values as a sport is by relocating this year's All-Star Game and MLB draft. He continues by saying, Major League Baseball fundamentally supports voting rights for all Americans and opposes restrictions to the ballot box. In 2020, MLB became the first professional sports league to join the nonpartisan Civic Alliance to help build a future in which everyone participates in shaping the United States. We proudly used our platform to encourage baseball fans and communities throughout our country to perform their civic duty and actively participate in the voting process. Fair access to voting continues to have our game's unwavering support. And essentially what happens with all of this, like I mentioned, is voter suppression has consequences. Conservatives and white Republicans, the majority of white Republicans, I don't want to say the majority, a lot of white Republicans, a lot of conservatives responded in a typical fashion. Kelly Loeffler, former Georgia senator, tweeted out the MLB had the chance to honor an iconic trailblazer and Braves legend Hank Aaron. Instead, they bowed to the woke disinformation campaign of the left to the detriment of hardworking Georgians and small businesses. Senator Mike Lee says, why does MLB still have antitrust immunity? It's time for the federal government to stop granting special privileges to specific favored corporations, especially those that punish their political opponents. Former President Donald Trump called for a boycott of Major League Baseball, and a bunch of different companies out of the states who more or less supported Major League Baseball's decision to do this. Again, the white conservative response, not the general response, but a lot of it is, like I said, typical. It is it's continuing to hold firm on the belief that any challenge to white supremacy and the idea of a more equal society, especially as it pertains to voting in this country, they seem to see it as a direct threat to their own freedoms. Limiting others' ability to vote is a direct threat on their own freedoms. That's absolutely true. There is no denying that, especially in the face of this. And again, it is typical of somebody like Kelly Loeffler to all of a sudden turn this around and try to make it some reverse racism type of issue. And I cannot help but look back at the history of the Atlanta Braves. And for that, for all intents and purposes, the Masters as well, who decided to do nothing in regards to this, because they themselves still have a very seedy and shady history when it comes to race and discrimination, which is in fact very, very recent. But I'll stick with the Braves first, because the history of the Braves, when they moved from Milwaukee to the state of Georgia and Atlanta, one of the prerequisites of them moving was for them to remove segregation at then Fulton County Stadium. This means that they had to remove the colored bleachers, the colored entrances, the colored water fountains that they still had in place there. Which is, again, so... It's so ironic that that somebody like Kelly Loeffler is bringing the idea of a reverse racism into the conversation, considering what Atlanta had to do to get the Braves, to get the Milwaukee Braves to come to that state. And as far as the Masters go, it was the Masters at Augusta National. They didn't allow their first black member until 1990. Up until 1983, they had exclusive black caddies at the club. Lee Elder was the first black player to play at the Masters in 1975. And get this, women weren't allowed to be members of the club until 2012. So again, what this is eventually boiling down to is a bigger picture to all of this. This isn't just about Major League Baseball. This isn't just about the Masters. But this is, like I said, it's about that bigger picture. It's about that remarkable responsibility that sports has to enact social change in this country and throughout the world. And what I'm going to read something that we posted on our website back in 2009. And this goes back to what happened with Deadspin when they tried to limit their content to just sports. And there was the whole stick to sports mantra that was going around, the shut up and dribble from Laura Ingraham, in conservative media that didn't want to hear. They wanted to continue to put their heads in the ground and try to mitigate the power that sports has when it comes to social change. Why? Because I think that they were very, very clear about the ability. They were very, very self-aware about the ability for sports to enact social change, and that's something that was a threat to them. So what I'm going to read, and this is something, like I said, that was back in 2019, and and this is what it says, when it comes to athletes sticking to sports, when it comes to athletes, sticking to sports presents an underlying message that athletes aren't human or don't have the capability to venture outside their realm of dribbling a basketball or throwing a football. Not only that, sticking to sports negates the advances in culture that sports has provided and continues to provide to this day. Sticking to a certain role would have meant that Jackie Robinson probably would have never have broken the color barrier in Major League Baseball. It also probably would have meant that Muhammad Ali would have never have taken a stand against an unjust war in Vietnam, or John Carlos and Tommy Smith making a statement against racial inequality in the United States. Sticking to sports, I'm sure, probably would have also meant that Magic Johnson would have never have gotten the opportunity to help dispel the fallacies surrounding HIV and AIDS early in his diagnosis. Generally speaking, through the inherent organic nature of sports should further dispel not only delusions surrounding the stick to sports mentality, but also expose the irony with the asinine statement itself. Sports and athletes help to break down gender norms, such as helping to promote strong, fierce women or granting men the allowance to cry tears of joy or break down in the agony of defeat. Not to mention, for as much as conservatives want to bitch and complain about athletes making statements during the national anthem in and of itself offers fans and athletes alike the grandiose stage to express quote-unquote pride for their country. It's probably also important to mention that professional, and in some cases amateur leagues around the country have taken it upon themselves to offer up rewards to athletes who work to make their communities a better place. It seems incredibly hypocritical to backstep on that with some reactionary statements. And that's what the general theme of Empire Sports and this show are going to represent. It's going to be a project that goes beyond sports and talks about the big picture within sports. And sports' role in helping enact social change in this country, just because of how powerful sports' ability in that framework to do just that. So, as far as this show, this podcast itself goes, I'm going to, again, look to do this hopefully once a month, maybe more than that. Again, depending on what the topics and the news dictates. This is going to be a news reactionary show, so to speak, exclusively, but it's going to be a show that, like I said, further expands the ability of sports to enact social change. In the meantime, you're going to be able to find us on a lot of different platforms. You can find us on YouTube, SoundCloud, and a bunch of various social media podcasting platforms, whether it be Spotify, Apple Music, so on and so forth. But in the meantime, I hope everybody has a great weekend, and we'll see you next time.